Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. If you had been the first person to set foot on the moon, what do you think you would have said? We all know what Neil Armstrong said, or at least we think we do. When you look into the story, things get complicated. Armstrong himself stated that he came up with the line himself, actually without a whole lot of premeditation. As he said, I thought about it after landing, and because we had a lot of other things to do, it was not something I really concentrated on, but just something that was kind of passing around subliminally or in the background. But it, was a pretty simple statement, talking about stepping off of something. It wasn't a very complex thing. It was what it was. On the other hand, Armstrong's brother has maintained that Armstrong showed him a paper with that line written on it weeks before the mission. NASA has consistently advocated for unscripted lines, thinking that the spur-of-the-moment reaction was more true and compelling. At this point, we'll never know. But that's not the only controversy surrounding this line. We tend to know the line, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. However, Armstrong always insisted that he said, that's one small step for a man. That's not what any of us heard. And even Armstrong, when he listened to the recording, said that he couldn't hear the A either, but insisted that it was there. Actually, in 2006, advanced technology analyzed the sound and confirmed that even though it got lost in the transmission to our ears, the A was there when he spoke it on the moon. Armstrong's first words on the moon were powerful and spoke in profound ways to the joint endeavor and accomplishment of all humanity. I think about Armstrong and his words often when I think of Jesus' first words to his disciples after the resurrection. If you had just risen from the dead and accomplished salvation for all people in all times, winning the battle over death and the devil, what do you suppose your first words would be? I am fascinated that Jesus chose to say, don't be afraid. This week, we are thinking about questions people asked Jesus, and our focus today is on a different question that his disciples asked him, and his answer was the same as his words after the resurrection. You know the story from Mark 4. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. This must have been a fierce storm indeed. Several of the disciples were fishermen on this lake, and they would have been familiar with its storms, especially how to deal with them in a boat. Yet even they are afraid. Jesus must have been deeply exhausted because he was sound asleep while the storm raged. There's a great painting by Rembrandt called The Storm on the Sea of Galilee that depicts the small boat just as they have awakened Jesus. It shows a dark and foreboding sky. Some disciples are hanging on for dear life in the waves. Some seem to be bailing water, and at least one is throwing up over the side. In the center, disciples are beseeching Jesus to help them. And amid all that chaos, Jesus appears calm and serene. That's when the disciples ask their question, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Maybe they wanted Jesus' help to bail water. I doubt they expected that Jesus would do what he did. He woke up and rebuked the wind and the waves, and suddenly there was a dead calm. Then Jesus asked a question of his own that perhaps caused a different kind of storm within their hearts. Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? You know, the disciples' cry to Jesus for help is the same question we so often ask. Jesus, we need help. Jesus, we are perishing. Don't you care? In the midst of our storms and struggles in life, when the rains of disaster pelt down and the waves of chaos threaten to swamp us, and the threat of drowning in our fears and worries seems so real, we cry out to Jesus too. And then Jesus calms the storm and assures us, God's got this. God's got you. Don't be afraid. Trust. Right now in our world, many of us are afraid. And the message is the same. God's got this. Don't be afraid. It's a powerful assurance. It's an assurance we need. Let me jump back to that painting by Rembrandt about the storm of the Sea of Galilee. Art historians have noticed something rather interesting in that painting. It's clear who Jesus is in the painting, but if you count the other people in the boat, there are 13 of them. That's wrong. Jesus and the 12 should total 13, but in the painting you have Jesus plus 13 others to equal 14. Scholars believe that Rembrandt painted himself into the picture, sitting near Jesus, as a profound proclamation of how much we need Jesus to still the storms in our own lives, and that's just what Jesus does. Teacher, don't you care that we are perishing? Yes, he does. And Jesus not only stills the storms, but assures us, don't be afraid. That's great news for all humankind. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.